1320 WILS. Today, more than 60 organizations associated with the Black Lives Matter movement releasing a series of demands, including the demand for reparations. I want to talk to a man who spent over 40 years in law enforcement, Dr. G.M. Cox. He now is the director of the Public Administration Master's Degree Program at Tarleton State University, but spent decades as a police officer and police chief in Texas. Dr. Cox, great to have you here.
Glad to be here, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good. And down in there in Texas, how big of a town were you a chief in, would you say?
Well, I was a chief in 4 cities in Texas, all the way from 2,800 people to the largest was a little over 25,000 people. Mm-hmm. Had 70 employees in one, and as few as 5 in another.
In terms of racial makeup, how would you describe some of these towns?
I would say very much racially mixed in Murphy, Texas. It's a city just under 20,000. We had a large number of Middle Eastern, Southeast Asian, Indian, Bangladeshian, Filipino, Taiwanese, Thailand.
A lot of immigrants and things like that.
A lot of them. Lamesa, Texas was predominantly well over 50% Hispanic. And then the other 2 communities I lived in had a large representation of African American.
What do you think of the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I don't quite understand it, quite frankly. I know why they're doing what they're doing, but I don't agree with it. In that the research doesn't support their position, and out of a recent article and research findings out of, I believe it was Harvard, and it happened to be a black professor, that the numbers aren't there to support what they're doing.
Yeah, his study looked at the shootings of right. The suspects, right, and there was no difference between black and white. But in terms of treatment, there was. He found that black suspects were handled physically more often, thrown to the ground, that kind of thing. Well, what did you make of that part of the study?
Well, part of that study also talks about the probability of police officers being physically confronted by suspects, and 40% of the time, those that either assault or resist police officers were African American. So some of that might be that officers are aware of the statistic, and their tactics are a little more aggressive because, in fact, those officers are assaulted at a greater rate by that demographic, if you understand.
In your view, why is that happening? Why are 40% of these physical interactions where the police officers are struggling with a suspect, why are they African American?
That's a great question. I don't know that his research got to that. I think is it the chicken or the egg, which came first? I think everybody needs to reevaluate. Police need to evaluate their method and tactics for interacting with any citizen, regardless of color. Also, people of color or people generally need to ask, what are they doing to contribute to their own confrontation posture with police? Are they being confrontational? Are they being respectful? Are they being compliant? I tell people all the time, if an officer tells you don't move, there's a reason. The officer sees a threat. The officer is trying to defend his or her life, as well as other people. And people need to understand that there's a 1.5, 2-second delay from the time a threat is seen or recognized to the time an officer can respond. In many cases, it's already over.
So officers are on edge. Dr. G.M. Cox, by the way, with Tarleton State University, 40-plus years in law enforcement himself. Now, what do you think the actual messaging from Black Lives Matter, what is it doing to how people are viewing the police?
Well, I don't really think they're helping the situation. They're not adding to a rhetoric that is a resolution. In fact, I would say their rhetoric is escalating emotions rather than de-escalating. They're putting all the responsibility on police, and maybe a great deal of responsibility should be on police. But at the same time, citizens need to understand, and people who are like advocacy groups are out there, they need to understand that they have a role to play as well.
Okay, tell me this, though. When black men say, look, whether you know it or not, I'm treated differently when I get pulled over, period. Whether it's the tone of voice or the way I'm approached, it's different. And what do you say to that?
Well, I think maybe it is. At the same time, maybe it's their perception of their interaction that is biased by their own worldview. So I personally, I heard an individual testifying the other day that, he's been stopped 7 times by police, and that's because he was black. I said, well, I'm white, and I've been stopped 7 times by police. I don't know that I blame it on them because I'm white or male. So sometimes our perspectives taint the ability to be objective about that
so
reason.
Let me ask you, if you were black and you found yourself getting pulled over, do you think it would cross your mind that I think I'm getting pulled over because I'm black?
Yeah, I probably would think that, but I don't know that I would agree with it. I think that's because people have been programmed. They can constantly hear that driving while DWB, we call it DWB, driving while black, driving while blonde or brown. I've known officers all my life, and I can tell you that in most cases, an officer doesn't know what color the driver of a vehicle is when they initiate the stop. In Texas, we have to record that kind of information now, and predominantly throughout the state, most officers report that they had no idea what the race of the individual was who was driving the vehicle before they stopped it. Now, obviously, they're going to find out once they make contact, but people are alleging that officers are making those stops solely because an individual is a member of a minority group, such as blacks or Hispanic.
Is there a way to, make the Black Lives Matter folks come around and view police officers differently, in your view?
Yeah, I think there's a way to do it. We have to start having dialogue. When I say dialogue, I mean open dialogue, where both sides are free to express without threat. I mean, some people call it information dominance, when you can say anything you want but the other side cannot. And we can't have that because nothing's going to move off of where it's at. So we've got to have an honest, forthright exchange and maybe a little bit of understanding on both parties. Police need to understand that they need to be hyper-vigilant how they approach an individual, a minority individual, and then minorities need to be hyper-vigilant how they behave and respond to an officer interacting with them.
Yeah. Do you, in terms of when you're dealing with your police officers, were there times where you found that one of the officers had a problem, a racial problem?
No, as a matter of fact, and for many years now, the state of Texas had a racial profiling law that requires us to take any kind of complaint that might include even a tinge of racial profiling. We have to open a case and investigate the case. And in many cases, we didn't have any. I mean, I've gone years without any.
But how does that work? Because it must come down to, the officer's word versus the driver's word. How do you determine if there really was some kind of inappropriate racial incident there?
Well, it's a great one. You have to go with dialogue. Did the officer say something that would go over that line of acceptable dialogue? Did they refer to them in a way that would be disrespectful as a racial issue? We have never seen. I mean, we videotaped almost every contact, and supervisors were required to review those tapes. And quite frankly, and in addition, we did. I don't know that I've been a chief of 35. The racial profiling law in Texas has been in effect, probably 15 years, maybe 20. I don't remember ever receiving just one complaint that an officer had racially profiled a citizen.
One last thing, Dr. Jim Cox, by the way, with Tarleton State University, the president's reaction to these police shootings, obviously he came down there to Dallas, not too far from you, and spoke about what happened in Dallas. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the way he's responded and his the way he feels about police?
Well, he's calling himself the law and order president, I think, or presidential candidate. I think to some degree all presidents see themselves, or candidates see themselves as law and order candidates, because quite frankly, if you're preaching anarchy, I don't know who want to vote for you. So I think what we have to do is have some dialogue about honesty. We have to have courageous dialogue.
Is President Obama encouraging that dialogue? Is he stimulating that?
I have to say that I don't think that President Obama has done quite as good a job as I would have liked to have seen in his support of police, particularly as it relates to the assassination of the 5 officers in Dallas, 3 officers, 2 were assassinated.
What didn't he say that you wanted to hear him say?
I would like to hear him say a lot more strong about this is just not acceptable. The American police officers are doing a great job. As a group, they do a great job. We don't need this kind of rhetoric and action.
What happens when he kind of balances it out and says, on the other side, you've got communities that feel that they're not treated properly? Well, what does that do when he talks like that?
I think he needs to balance it. This certainly needs to be balanced. I don't think police expect him to just go way overboard and say, what you're saying makes no difference. We cannot have this violence against cops. I think he has to be balanced. But I would tell you, my perception, the feedback I get from fellow officers out there is that they do not believe that President Obama has been fair and balanced in his treatment of police.
Yeah, and as of today, 60 groups with Black Lives Matter, they want a set of demands, including reparations, the end to the death penalty. What do you think of that one, the end of the death penalty down there in Texas?
Well, I don't know that he'll get that. That's going to happen in Texas. The state of Texas has been a long supporter of the death penalty. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not here to talk about, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Reparations, I don't know what their legal standpoint is for reparations. Every wrongful death suit has the potential to have reparations. It's called damages.
Well, they want reparations for what they see are past and continuing harms to African Americans, kind of a race-wide reparation, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. They have to have a cause and effect, even in civil law, to get that. I don't know what they're connecting that to. Maybe it's just another plank in their methodology to get some sympathy. Quite frankly, I don't see them getting a lot of sympathy because they really haven't been showing respect. Even if you don't like police officers, but police officers are assassinated, this the respect. You don't throw a protest 3 days after the assassination of 5 cops and 2 in Baton Rouge. So I think the Black Lives Matter movement's hurting themselves in some of their own tactics.
Dr. G.M. Cox, Director of the Public Administration Master's degree at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, 40-plus years in law enforcement himself as an officer and a chief. Dr. Cox, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.